audience.
Welcome to the first Beatdown report of 2014. My name is The Clute. Not really. But let's call me that for today. And want to welcome you to a new year. If no one has said Happy New Year to you yet, which is statistically impossible, let me be the first. Happy 2014. Hope everything turns out well for you this year. Hope your dreams are realized, your passions are fulfilled. What is the Beatdown Report if you're a first-time listener? Well, the Beatdown Report is a bi-weekly sort of talk show, sort of, where I, the Clute, your humble host, discuss issues of the day that affect you as an American and a citizen of the world. Basically, it's just a way to kind of get the issues out there and, take it to people who really deserve to be taken to. We're gonna talk about things as they happen in the world and in the universe. And overall, I think you'll be rewarded. You'll be enriched. You will have a greater understanding of the situations that affect you. And I might rant a little bit, and you might listen, and you might get angry. But hey, whatever. So let's talk about me for a second, because that is a subject that I am familiar with. And last night I went up to Sedona, Arizona for the Sedona Poetry Slam at the Mary D. Fisher Theater on State Route 89A, the heart of downtown Sedona. And I won. A little bit of humble brag right there. I did it with some older pieces. I will say this, that Dick Cheney remains comedy gold. If you want to make fun of someone, Dick Cheney is one of those people that you can still make fun of, no matter where you are in America. People will get the joke. They might not laugh, but they will get the joke. And did it with an old piece about SB 1070, if you'll remember that little bit of legislative fiction that Russell Pierce cooked up. And then I did an off-the-cuff piece about death, because I'm a happy man. But yeah, so it's been pretty well. Did pretty well there. Walked away with $75, and I promise if anyone from the IRS is listening, I shall declare that on my tax information for 2014. God, this is being recorded. This is being archived. I actually have to do that now. But yeah, 2014 has been pretty good so far. I think everyone's. I haven't really met anyone yet who has not had a good start to their year. Maybe you're out there, maybe you're listening, and maybe you're, deciding whether or not that 2014 is the year that you make your final exit. But I assure you, 2014 will be a good year for everyone. Except maybe some people in Argentina. I don't know if you heard about this. There are piranhas. We all know piranhas, the whole, you're taught in grade school that piranhas can skeletonize a cow in like 30 seconds. And we've seen the horrible movies, the Jaws ripoffs that feature piranhas. And basically when you say piranha, people know, oh, piranha, dangerous fish. But when you think about it, you never really know anyone who's been bitten by a piranha. You never really know anyone, or you never hear in the news about, you hear about shark attacks, and you hear about bear attacks and wolf attacks and all that kind of stuff. But you never hear about piranha attacks until last year. See, we here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's winter. But down below in the Southern Hemisphere, it's summer because of the way that the Earth tilts and rotates and all this stuff that I really can't explain properly. But it's their summer, so people are going to the beach. And in Argentina, their beaches are attached to rivers, which thread through the great, Amazon Delta. Not Amazon Delta, but the Amazon River Basin. And apparently, toward the end of last year, 70 people were injured in a single piranha attack. No one died. No one was skeletonized. But yeah, 30 people or 70 people got bitten up. One person like lost a toe. And so, piranhas, you think that you have, don't have to really worry about that. It's an urban legend. It's like the guy with the hook hanging off the car door. It's not really a thing that happens, but it is. So watch out for piranhas. Another thing you have to worry about is the war on Christmas. Did you survive? I hope you did. If you're listening to me, you probably survived, and maybe you were listening to this in a coma because you were injured during the war on Christmas, and Godspeed. But yeah, the war on Christmas, man, that was rough. I remember, I think we lost 3 cities. 2 were hit by atomic weapons, and 1 was burned to the ground by Presbyterian extremists. Yeah, war on Christmas. What a load of bullcrap that is, isn't it? There is no war on Christmas. This is America. I guarantee you right now, I know in my front yard, we still have Christmas decorations up because my girlfriend has not taken them down yet. And that's her project. She puts the lights up, she takes them down because she likes to do that. And I'm content with like a string of lights and a plastic baby Jesus in the front yard that's glowing. But still, everyone has Christmas lights. I guarantee you, wherever you live, somewhere with an eye shot of your domicile, or walking down the street, you're going to see Christmas lights during Christmas. You're going to see things that say Merry Christmas. You're going to see many representations of the baby Jesus. And if there was a war on Christmas, one would imagine that you would not be able to see that. That was if you could go somewhere. I suppose if you live in like Montana, where it's 50 miles to your nearest neighbor, and you don't celebrate Christmas, that maybe you won't see Christmas lights, but you're going to see them. So what is the war on Christmas? Well, a couple years ago, we're talking like 2004, there was a guy at Fox News. I know, big surprise. His name was John Gibson, and he hosted a program called The Big Show. And everything, all the stories started off with big, like, it was like the big story or the big follow-up. It was just typical marketing bullshit. But he promulgated, am I pronouncing that right? He created the war on Christmas because he found people, a school wouldn't let kids sing Silent Night because it explicitly references the birth of Jesus Christ, who is a religious figure. People say, oh, Jesus was a historical figure. Well, yeah, so was the Buddha, so was, Muhammad. But we still recognize these figures more as religious figures than, say, historical figures on account with, like, Joan of Arc. Well, I guess she might be a religious figure, too. But, like, Charlemagne or I don't know. People who exist in history but aren't necessarily specifically religious. No one's worshiping Charlemagne, but people are worshiping Jesus. So schools sometimes decide maybe it's not a good idea to explicitly reference the head of a religious denomination in songs that we're forcing kids to sing. So John Gibson turned this whole thing into a marketing campaign for Fox to drive viewers to the network. Because remember, if you believe in the war on Christmas, you're already an angry conservative. I put money on that at Vegas. You're probably an angry white conservative. I would also put money on that at Vegas. But it's a way to drive people to your news station at a time of year when there isn't a lot of news. Generally, December is when the whole country shuts down, especially in the Christmas week. No one's watching the news. Everyone's watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and they're watching It's a Wonderful Life, and no one's gives a damn in America about what happens to the rest of the world at Christmas time. Everyone's concerned about having to deal with your relatives and having to bake cookies and buying the right present and not getting trampled at Toys R Us when you're trying to get the hot toy this year. So, again, it's a marketing scam. It's plain and simple. But in the last, 7 years since the war on Christmas was created, it has become an actual thing that we have to deal with as Americans, which is really depressing because the war on Christmas is just one of those things that metastasizes because of people's stupidity. If you're listening to this, you've probably gotten a chain letter from someone saying, oh my God, look what these horrible liberals are doing. And I'm spelling liberals, by the way, LIB''RULS, because that's how the conservatives spell the word. But I How about some horrible, terrible thing that some government bureaucrat has done? Like, basically the equivalent of, because there is no nativity scene in the courthouse square, that bureaucrat John Smith has taken a shit on the Bible. The two things are not equal, of course, but that's what they are equated to in those types of email forwards you get. And it was real interesting this year because the courts and the state legislatures are dealing with the whole concept of religious freedoms. And what they're doing is they are basically trying to clear the way for more Christian symbolism on the public square. So state legislators in Florida, in Oklahoma, etc., Wisconsin, they are saying that you can have a religious display if you allow other religious displays at the same time. So the first example is like in Tallahassee, where they had their, I grew up in Florida. I've been to Tallahassee once in my life. I spent the day in the bus station. I don't know what the state capitol looks like, but at some point they had a nativity scene. So a local, I can't remember, the story was like, he's like an atheist or he's an agnostic or something like that. And he didn't really celebrate Christmas, but he was sick of his tax dollars going to support public display of religion. So he petitioned and was successful and got a Festivus pole installed in the state capitol. For those of you who don't know what Festivus is, it is a fake religious holiday created during the 1990s run of Seinfeld by George Costanza's father, where it was an alternate holiday for those who didn't celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Eid or whatever religious holiday happens to be around that time. And it's, it creates a Festivus pole instead of a tree, and it's featured with feats of strength and such. And it's a good laugh, and everyone has a good time. This year, however, we have a new senator not a new senator, he's been around for a couple of years now, but Rand Paul, I believe, Kentucky or Tennessee, I don't know. Kentucky and Tennessee always blend together for me. They're like one state arbitrarily cut in half. But Senator Rand Paul decided that one of the things of Festivus is you air a list of grievances. So Rand Paul, being sharp with the Twitter, decided that he was going to put out some Festivus tweets. And one of them, he was going to air his grievances. And so this is on the 23rd of December. And he puts a grievance out about bipartisanship, where Cory Booker doesn't retweet Rand Paul enough. Cory Booker, if you don't know, is a newly elected senator from New Jersey. He's the former mayor of Newark. Seems like an all-around awesome guy, and you can basically see in his eyes that he wants the presidency. So I bet you he sticks around a couple terms in the Senate, and he goes off to a run for president. Probably, my guess would be 2016, and then 2020, probably 2024, after Hillary Clinton's second term. And yes, I do believe Hillary Clinton will be president in 2016. But going back to the tweets of Rand Paul. And so Cory Booker responds back with, "You, me, and feats of strength, Senate floor. Name the time, Senator Rand Paul." And at one point, Rand Paul then throws out, to Cory Booker, how about mandatory minimum sentencing reform instead? Now, if you don't know what mandatory minimum is, basically, if you're busted, it's like the three strikes and you're outlaw. If you commit your third crime, regardless of what it is, you go to jail for life. A mandatory minimum is if you're caught with X amount of Y drug, that you go to jail for a minimum of 25 years, regardless of the circumstances. So Cory Booker and Rand Paul, according to these Festivus tweets, are going to be working on changing the mandatory minimum sentencing laws, which, quite frankly, are bullshit and have a tendency to be very racially motivated in sentencing. The biggest example is the difference between getting caught with crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. You're going to go to jail for a lot less time with powder cocaine than you would with crack. And so in a Festivus miracle, Rand Paul and Cory Booker are going to be working on mandatory minimum sentencing reform. So that's an awesome, awesome thing. And this came about because of a joke, because people were talking about Festivus in the public square, which, great. I think that is the spirit of the holiday, whether the holiday is Festivus or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. But so that, but this is the first year that in Tallahassee that a Festivus pole went up in the Capitol building. And, people got annoyed about it. I remember Gretchen Carlson of Fox News was whining. And again, I really want to know what the hiring process is at Fox. Like, do they strap you to a machine and see if you can punch out enough sufficient rage to make the audience appreciation meters go up to a certain point? Because when I watch people like Gretchen Carlson, or I watch people, basically the whole morning lineup for Fox, the Fox and Friends idiots and Gretchen Carlson, now that she has her own show, she's graduated from the idiots. And there's a couple other anchors that just seem like, if you put these people into a rocket and then fired that rocket into the sun, the world would probably be a better place. But be that as it may, she was whining that there is a Festivus pole near her nativity scene, as if somehow the Festivus pole, as if her faith is so weak that the Festivus pole somehow diminishes what she believes or what other people could believe in. It's bullshit, but these people got upset about it. But something good came out of it, so we'll call that a wash. We have the dumbing down of the Vox Populi because of Fox News, but we have mandatory minimum sentencing reform because someone was talking about a Festivus pole. We'll take it. And another thing that happened was in Wisconsin, a group of American atheists, Wisconsin chapter, put up a sign for the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which, if you don't know what Pastafarianism is, or the Flying Spaghetti Monster, go look it up. But the shorthand is basically, it is no less ridiculous to believe in a flying spaghetti monster than it is to believe in a sky giant who welcomes you into the afterlife when you die. And, I'm simplifying that. I don't know where I stand anymore on religious belief, but it's basically the argument of the atheist. And it's not a bad argument, because really God is a nebulous concept that is ill-defined when you really think about it. I mean, we have defined him. We put him as Jesus, or we put him as Allah, or we put him as, I don't know who the Zoroastrians believe in, but, someone like that. We have a Yahweh probably, but we have a figure head that represents the organization of the afterlife. The way McDonald represents McDonald's, God represents the afterlife. So they put up a sign saying basically that people need to, as a joke at first, they need to be touched by his noodly appendage. And oh my gosh, I just lost one of my printouts. There's like a windstorm in here right now. It's just blowing everything around. I have to put my wallet full of last night's winnings of Sedona Poetry Slam money. I won $75, which is going straight to vodka. But anyway, so they put up a sign saying that you need to, the flying spaghetti monster was boiled for your sins. Be touched by his noodly appendage before it's too late. And then it says, do you think this is ridiculous? We do too. Check out atheism. I'm not, I don't know the effectiveness of the marketing campaign of atheism. It's like, that's got to be a terrible job. You like, okay, you walk into a Madison Avenue advertising agency and you're like, so we need a marketing campaign. And so the marketing guy, who I imagine looks like Don Draper or Roger Sterling, who's much better, I think, in that show than Don Draper. But I don't know. Did I just kind of I have a non-sexual crush on Roger Sterling. I want to be Roger Sterling from Mad Men. But beside the point, we are glad my producer wasn't here to hear that. Anyway, so you go to this ad guy. It's like, we need you to sell people on something. I'm like, okay, we can do that. We're Madison Avenue. We can do anything. We want you to sell people on the belief that when you die, nothing happens. You just blink out of existence. And I imagine the ad man would be like, okay, but I mean, people don't want to believe that. People want to believe that they exist forever. And the atheist probably says, well, yeah, they want to believe that, but it's not true. So we got to convince them that when they die, they just blink out. And then in 1 million billion years, the whole universe blinks out of existence, and eternity is as a meaningless void. And I imagine the ad man probably said, well, I had spaghetti last night. Why don't we make that into a thing? I don't know. I like the concept of the flying spaghetti monster personally. I think the flying spaghetti monster is cute. Not Roger Sterling cute, but still pretty cute. Anyway, so the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, which is identifies itself as a nonprofit public interest law firm dedicated to protecting the free expression of all religious traditions, from Anglicans to Zoroastrians, for 19 years. Its attorneys have been recognized as experts in the field of church-state law. The Becket Fund recently won a 9-0 Supreme Court victory in the Hosanna-Tabor versus Equal Employment Opportunity Commission case, which the Wall Street Journal called one of the most important religious liberty cases in half a century. I didn't bother to look at the case. That's irrelevant to what we're talking about. But here's what the Becket Fund states about the flying spaghetti monster ad at the state capitol. The problem here is that government bureaucrats have forgotten that there is a difference between government speech and private speech. The government is allowed to speak in its own voice and communicate its own message when it recognizes important aspects of human history or culture, and we'll go back to that in a second. It is not required to include every possible competing message. The Postal Service can issue a stamp honoring Martin Luther King without also honoring the Ku Klux Klan. Congress can celebrate Veterans Day without also celebrating Pacifist Day. And Wisconsin can recognize Christmas and Hanukkah without also recognizing the flying spaghetti monster. First off, what I mentioned earlier about Jesus and Muhammad and Zoroaster, I'm going back to Zoroaster a lot today, but these figures are not just historical figures. You cannot divorce them from their religious influence. That's, you take the, if we just look at Jesus as a historical figure, and there's actually an excellent book on that you should read called Zealot, and that's by Reza Aslan, where he talks about Jesus as a historical revolutionary. You cannot divorce Jesus from the fact that he also said, oh, by the way, and if you believe in me, you get to live forever in paradise, and if you don't, you go to hell. And I mean, that's a pretty big component of who Jesus Christ was. If he was just a carpenter's son who decided that he was going to piss off the Romans 2,000 years ago, no one would care. We wouldn't remember him. There have been probably 1 million revolutionaries who have risen up and died and disappeared into the dust of time. And we don't form a religion around them because, we already have religions that are, we don't need them. It's basically, if you take away the religious context of Jesus Christ, he's basically Che Guevara in a certain sense. And no one is suggesting that we build up a religion around Che Guevara, except t-shirt manufacturers. And, so the problem that they have is they want to celebrate the nativity, by the way, the virgin birth of the Messiah of humanity, the Savior of humanity. But they just want to have the nativity scene of, oh, here's some dude who was born. That's not what it is. The nativity scene is a seminal moment in the transition of world history. That's how we measure time. BC, Anno Domini, what's the dividing line? The birth of Christ, if you use that particular calendar, if you use the Julian calendar. So it's a significant event, yes, historically, but the history is irrelevant without the religious significance. And they're basically the Becket Fund is trying to keep your head from exploding from the cognitive dissonance that must create in their head. Jesus is important as a religious figure, but we're just acknowledging him as a historical figure. That's bullshit. So, the Wisconsin is doing the right thing by letting other groups express a view that is in contrast to the religious view that another group is doing. Because remember, and the nativity is not there by state fiat. Maybe they have a Christmas tree or something like that, but the nativity is there because a religious group put it up. So if the city is going to put up one religious view, they have to put up other opposing religious views. What if it wasn't the flying spaghetti monster? What if it was something like, I don't know, a messianic Jewish sect who believed that Jesus wasn't the Messiah? And so they had there's the nativity, and then on the opposite side there was, I'm not sure what you would do in that place. Maybe a guy, just an old Jewish man going, well, he was a very good man, but we don't believe he was the Messiah. And he just says that like 24 hours a day. But you'd have to do that because the Messianic Jewish cults who don't believe that, or not cults, but the Messianic Jewish religions that don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah and that he is still coming, believe that anyone who worships Jesus Christ as the Messiah is an idiot. And that's a legitimate point. So, they have to make room for these other displays of atheism or Islam, or in the case of Oklahoma, Satanism. And I don't think that's going to fly. If Oklahoma puts a monument to Satan on the state capitol grounds, one, I'm immediately going to the Oklahoma State Capitol and taking a picture of it. But two, Oklahoma will then rise up into the sky and take off to Dimension X. It's not going to happen. But it's a neat concept, and I think that's what will eventually kill these kind of religious, faith injections into state political scenes, because you can't do it. The First Amendment specifically says a state cannot promote religion, and a state putting up a nativity scene or a menorah or a replica of the Kaaba, or a statue of the ninth incarnation of Buddha or whatever, is the state saying, hey, this has merit, this is valid. And state's not permitted to do that. End of story. But so that's flying spaghetti monster. That was something that the Becket Fund really didn't have a sense of humor about. And but ultimately, what this goes to is the war on Christmas. Really is the subtext for right-wing conservatives is that there's an actual war on Christians, that Christians somehow in the United States are under assault. And, to a certain point, they may not be wrong, in the sense that Christianity, specifically Anglo-Saxon Protestantism, whatever flavor of that is, was a major force in owning the power structure of this country for a long time. There were no Jewish presidents. There has not been a Jewish president yet. There's not been a Muslim president. I know what some right-wingers think, that Obama is a Muslim, but he's not. If anything, he's an atheist. But actually, if Obama's not Christian, he's an atheist. I don't believe he's a Muslim. My personal belief is that he's an agnostic, which I would totally respect, because makes sense. I don't know what God is. Just because he's the president doesn't make it seem that he would know what God is either. No one knows. Beside the point. So Christians believe that because their power, their stranglehold on the power structure is slowly being loosened, that somehow this is a war on them. And it's not a war. They might see it as a war, but it's not. It is the relaxing of their grip on who and what controls this country. It's allowing other viewpoints to be expressed. It's allowing other religions to flourish in a country that ostensibly bases itself on freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press. Other viewpoints are allowed to go out there. Christians, quite frankly, not all Christians, but a certain loud and vocal subset, don't want to accept that. They want to be the top of the pyramid, top of the totem pole, top of the pops, top of the charts, whatever you want to call it. They don't want any competition. Now, we live in a representative democracy. When you vote, you're not voting your own opinion. You're voting to get someone. Well, you might be voting your opinion, but you're voting to get someone to Washington, D.C., who will then vote ostensibly to reflect your viewpoints. So let's look at the makeup of the U.S. Senate, which is a lot easier than looking up the makeup of the U.S. House, because there's 435 members of the House and there is only 100 members of the Senate. So in this, the most august body of our legislative branch of government, very powerful, passes laws, ratifies treaties, all this other stuff. Let's see the breakdown. Now, if you believe in this war on Christmas / Christians, you might think that, oh my God, the Senate is in the hands of atheists and whoremongers and sodomites and all these other horrible names, and there's only a few good Christians left in the U.S. Senate and blah blah blah. Well, let's look at the religious breakdown of the 100 senators who are currently in the U.S. Senate. I think my producer needs to get a lozenge. That's Johnny Skinner in the background, folks. He's producing today. And he's under the weather. The windstorm has died down. We're thankful for that. But let's see. The figures are: we have 27 Catholic senators, Roman Catholic senators. We have 13 Presbyterian senators. I have no idea what Presbyterian means. I know it's not Roman Catholic. Then we have 10 Jewish senators. And then we have 11 Baptist. We have 8 Methodist. We have 7 Mormon. I did not know that. There were 7 Mormons in the U.S. Senate. 5 Lutherans. I expected there would be way more Lutherans. 4 Protestants, 4 Episcopalians, which, Episcopalians is Catholic light. We have 2 people who identify as evangelical Christians. And these are, strangely enough, these are both from South Carolina, Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham. And we have a Buddhist, which I was actually very surprised to find that out. There was one Buddhist, the recently elected senator from Hawaii, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she is a Buddhist. We have 1 Church of Christ, which I'm suspicious of because Church of Christ always sounds like one of those churches you see in the storefronts next to like the grocery store. The ones that look really like, you just don't want to say God bless them because they believe their belief in that religion is strong enough that they're willing to go to church in a place that used to be a GameStop. There's 1 member of the Church of God, also sounding like that kind of same thing. 3 United Church of Christ. I haven't even heard of some of these religions. And there are 3 people in the Senate who are unaffiliated with any religion. One of them was raised Jewish. One of them was raised Presbyterian. One of them, and I can't remember who. I think it was, it's a female senator I know, and I can't remember her name, which doesn't list her religion background or current at all. So there are, of the people who are in the U.S. Senate, 96% fall under the Judeo-Christian value structure that right-wingers, people who believe in the war on Christmas / Christians, the viewpoint is being represented. There are only 4% of other religions or unaffiliated or non-religious people represented in the U.S. Senate. That is fucking crazy. If you think there's a war on Christians, then you are not paying attention to the facts at hand. Maybe these Christians have different viewpoints than you. I know evangelicals, for instance, many evangelicals, I don't want to use the corollary of all because that's not true, but many evangelicals don't believe that Catholics are even Christian. Many evangelicals believe that Catholics are bound for hell because we have, and I identify as Catholic, although, again, my beliefs are across the board lately. But evangelicals believe Catholics are going to hell. They don't even believe they're Christian. But every one of these religions, Catholicism, Presbyterianism, Baptist, Methodist, Mormon, Lutheran, Protestantism, Episcopalianism, all believe that Christ, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, only begotten Son of God, blah, 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 is the core of their belief system. If there were 75% of people who did not believe in Christ, then yeah, okay, maybe say, oh my gosh, the government's turning against us. Holy crap. That's not happening. That's not happening. And there are other groups that are again, unaffiliated people in the United States represent 16% of the population. 16%. Only 4% representation, 3% representation in government. I'm sorry, I was including the Buddhist in that. Mormons and Jews are overrepresented. Presbyterians are way overrepresented. They represent 13% of the Senate, but they're only 3% of the U.S. population. So there's no war on Christians. There's no war on religion. If you want to see a war on religion or a war against a religious group, look at the Holocaust. Look at the Roman persecution of Christians back in the early centuries. We're talking like, AD 100, AD 200. I mean, at one point, St. Lawrence, a Catholic saint, who was the patron saint of cooks, by the way, was roasted alive on a giant grill during the persecution of Christians by Emperor Valerian. And one of the historians at the time said that he joked with his torturers, turn me over, I'm done on this side, which that is straight fucking baller for St. Lawrence. But again, that's a war on Christians. That is a war on Christians. North Koreans, Christians and North Koreans. Listen, this is from the Daily Mail from November 11th of last year. Several large-scale public executions of around 80 people have taken place in North Korea, according to a South Korean newspaper. In one, women and children were herded into a sports stadium and forced to watch people being shot dead by machine gun fire. They couldn't confirm the deaths, but you can never confirm anything that comes out of North Korea. They say why the executions took place is difficult to ascertain. Some of the deaths may have been a punishment for perceived crimes of watching South Korean movies, distributing pornography, using prostitutes, and possessing Bibles. There was reported that 10,000 people were ordered into the Shinpung Stadium and forced to watch 8 people who were tied to stakes with sacks over their heads being killed by machine guns. That is a war on Christians. Not having a publicly funded nativity is not. So who are John Gibson of Fox News? He's gone. Yeah, well, he's not gone. He's been pushed off to radio, where basically that's like Siberia for a Fox News personality. But the latest asshole who's doing this is a guy named Todd Starnes. Now, Todd Starnes is your typical Fox News dipshit. But he's a little bit special because he's like the Paula Deen of Fox News. He is the white splainiest, mansplainiest commentator you've ever heard of. He shows up to, sometimes when he does interviews, with his own goddamn rocking chair. And he sits on his porch like he's strumming a fucking banjo, and he's talking about how things used to be better in my day when what better was it in his day? When segregation was still a thing. When homosexuals didn't have the right to get married, stuff like that. That's what he wants to go back to. He wants to go back to the place where white Christian men are at the top of the power structure and everyone else is in the bottom, and everyone else throws up hosannas to the white Christian male because, oh my God, what would this country be without him? And you know what? The country would probably be a lot better off if we didn't listen to these white Christian male assholes for the last 200 and some years exclusively. Everyone's viewpoint's got to be represented, but we've been held back as a society because of these. So anyway, I don't know. And if anyone read the recent Before Watchmen series, the most hated thing in Alan Moore's life, the stories the prequels to the comic book Watchmen, and the Night Owl story featured a subplot where Rorschach, one of the superheroes, is taking down a Bible preacher, hypocritical, insane Bible preacher. And he looks exactly like Todd Starnes. So what this asshole is doing is that he's lying. And he's lying for Jesus. And he's a fucking dick. And this is where we get a little bit agitated. So here's what happened. There were basically some boys and girls spent Friday making homemade Christmas cards for bedridden veterans at a VA hospital in Dallas. And some of the Christmas cards violated VA policy. Kind of. Here's what Todd Starnes said that the VA hospital said. By the way, this is coming from patheos.org. This is a story, Todd Starnes sold us a war on Christianity. We bought it, by Alan Noble. How Todd Starnes reported the statement was, in order to be respectful of our veterans' religious beliefs, all donated holiday cards are reviewed by a multidisciplinary team of staff led by chaplaincy services and determined if they are appropriate, non-religious, to freely distribute to patients. We regret this process was not fully explained to this group and apologize for any misunderstanding. So if you read it like that, it's like, oh my God, they're filtering out the religious cards and they're tossing them in the trash. It's not fucking true. the actual statement, which Todd Starnes cut out an entire paragraph. What that paragraph states is, after the review is complete, the holiday cards that reference a religious or secular tones are then distributed by the chaplaincy on a one-on-one basis if the patient agrees to the religious references in the holiday card donation. The holiday cards that do not contain religious or secular tones are distributed freely to patients across the healthcare system. So basically what it's just saying is that if you're not religious, you don't have to take a religious card. If you are religious, you have the option to do it. That's not difficult to understand, and it's not a war on Christians. So, I'll just go back to the Bible, which Todd Starnes has alleged to have read. What was that word? Read. And in Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 to 37. Again, you have heard that it is said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but you shall perform your oaths to the Lord. And what that means is don't fucking lie. Especially not for God. And there are some other people, who are all part of this war on Christmas bullshit. Sarah Palin, remember the Duck Dynasty bullcrap that happened at the end of the year. She said free speech is an endangered species. It's not. No, actually it is, but not for the reasons that she thinks. You can't walk into a shopping mall, one of what has replaced common areas in this country, and start spouting off. If you do, the mall management has the right to kick you off the property. So, and you can balance private property rights versus freedom of speech rights, and that's a topic for a whole nother day. But, people who believe that because their viewpoints aren't immediately sanctioned by the government and flooded into every household and dropped on the courthouse steps and in the public rotundas of the Capitol buildings, need to get over themselves. It's not about them. It's not about your religion. It's about freedom of speech for every American, and because other freedom of speeches are allowed, or viewpoints are allowed, doesn't make your freedom of speech less viable. Anyway, yeah. So that's basically the war on Christmas. That's how I spent my Christmas. I love the war on Christmas. That's actually my favorite time of year, because I have nothing to do at the end of the year. I don't have any kids. I already bought the things that I want for myself. My girlfriend's an atheist, so it's not like we're out there singing Christmas carols and hosannas. So what I look for is watching idiots argue on TV. And while I can see that any time of year, the war on Christmas makes it a little more special because you get to have a cup of eggnog and you get to have some sugar cookies while you're doing it, and it's festive. And that's the important part. When we're talking about bullshit, let's make it festive. Anyway, folks, I think that we're just about done for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about some new and exciting things that have gotten me all riled up and angry. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank my producer here today, Johnny Skinner. And we are just about out of time. Remember, this is brought to you by Brick Cave Media and Brick Cave Audio specifically. I know we're hosted by someone, but Ustream, I'm looking at Ustream over there, so we're going to say we're being broadcast on Ustream. Thank you, Ustream, for providing us a freedom of speech portal. Next show, I don't know what we're going to talk about. It's going to be fun. I think it'll be fun. I think we're going to be, talking about politics for the next goddamn 11 months. Because we've got an election this year. Off-year election. That means it's the most important election. Just because there isn't a president being elected doesn't mean you get to sit home on election day and eat Cheetos and watch Law and Order reruns. You can go vote, and then you go home, then you eat your Cheetos, and you watch your Law and Order reruns. And when you're watching Law and Order, make sure you're watching watch the good ones. Watch the ones with Lenny Briscoe, Jerry Orbach, the greatest television detective in world history. All right, folks. Well, you have a good week and 2 weeks, and I will talk to you in 2 Sundays. Go forth and serve the Lord, or not a Lord, whatever you believe in. Go forth and do it. Have fun. Adios.